Hey, 131 folks. I'm going to do a little bit of a discussion here on the discussion board. It's kind of strange, but I have popped up here a discussion on Jonathan Edwards' Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God because it's part of the Great Awakening, and I have a fascination for this, and most people don't understand the fascination. I am fascinated by church and religion and belief. And the thing is Edwards is coming in relatively new as a minister, and it's a family trait, and he's educated, and he's been to church for years and years and years. But he has a different approach, and his idea is this: is that people have lost their passion, they have lost their emotion. They're not their belief, but their passion for God and their passion for being saved. And so, having been to several churches along the way, he is old doctrine, but he is introducing a new doctrine. And so, if you've not been to a revival, if you've not been to a Southern Baptist or any variety of certain gospel churches along the way, then you might not understand. I grew up in a Catholic church. At that particular time, yes, a long time ago, but not that long ago, they were still doing the Latin Mass. So as a 9-year-old, if you're going to preach at me in Latin, it's not going to do a whole lot of good because I still am not well versed in Latin in spite of what I do for a living. And so it's limited understanding. And so is the true of most young children when they're listening to somebody preach the Bible. And unfortunately for most people, because most people don't actually read whatever liturgical texts they're into, whether it happens to be Islamic or whether it happens to be Buddhist or whether it happens to be any number of things. But what Edwards is on about is this, is he's saying we've lost our passion for belief. And so what I want you to do in reading this is I want you to think, okay, well, listen, he's in church, and this is what he's hearing. And I'm going to read the actual text, and I want you to envision a sedate minister up there and saying, on this verse is threatened to... Pardon me, let me start again. Deuteronomy 32, verse 35, the foot shall slide in due time. On this verse is threatened the vengeance of God on the wicked, unbelieving Israelites, that they were God's visible people and lived under the means of grace, and that notwithstanding all God's wonderful works that he had wrought towards that people, yet remained as expressed. Verse 28, void of counsel, having no understanding in them, and that under the cultivations of heaven brought forth bitter and poisonous fruit, as in the two verses next preceding the text. The expression that I have chosen for my text, their foot shall slide in due time, seems to imply the following things relating to the punishment and destruction that these wicked Israelites were exposed to. They were always exposed to destruction, as one stands or walks in slippery places is always exposed to fall. This is implied in manner of the destructions coming upon them, being represented by their foot sliding. This same is expressed in Psalm 73:18. Surely thou didst set them in slippery places, thou castest them down into destruction. And implies they were always exposed to sudden, unexpected destruction. Here's the thing. Imagine your preacher talking about this, your priest, your minister talking about this, and he is going on. And unfortunately, many of them have read this so many times that they're a bit monotone. They're not impassioned about it. And so as they're reading it, I mean, a lot of people tune out, and that's unfortunate. But what he's doing is he's going over this and he's bringing it up and he's talking about it. And even though he's going to start in this standard sermon, I want you to think, okay, well, listen, you're sitting on the pew, you're sitting in church, it's hot, it's the middle of summer. You're thinking, listen, I got this to do, I got that to do, I got to take care of, this and that and everything else. And that you're only half paying attention. And so as he's preaching, the observation from the words that I would now insist upon is this. And suddenly there is an explosion of this. And the explosion is this. And he says the observation from the words that I would now insist upon is this. There is nothing that keeps wicked men in any one moment out of hell but the mere pleasure of God. by the mere pleasure of God, I mean his sovereign pleasure, his arbitrary will, restrained by no obligation, hindered by no manner of difficulty, any more than if nothing else but God's will had in the least degree of any respect whatsoever, any hand in the preservation of wicked men in any one moment. The truth of this observation may appear by the following considerations. Imagine that you are this person in church and you are half asleep when suddenly this minister, this sedate, this easygoing English educated minister just blows up and is so impassioned. You know, it's the thing I love about Southern churches is this passion that often shows up. I always relate them to the old, later chubby Elvis who likes to karate chop in the middle of music, because I would watch the minister here on Sunday mornings where they start off in this suit and tie and very sedate, and by the end of whatever sermon, they have lost the tie. They very often lost the jacket. Their hair is a muss. Their collar's loose. They're perspiring, and they got their, tissue out there wiping their forehead because they're so impassioned into what's going on. And this was Edward's introduction into this. And the thing is he leaves these people dangling over the precipice of a fiery hell with their very souls in jeopardy, and realizing that they're dangling over this precipice by the whims of God, and that he knows every thought. He knows that they are sinners, and he is now angry. And these people are like, ooh, I mean, imagine your church, your normal, sedate, easygoing church, breaking out in sobbing and crying and sheer terror. And this is what he does. And this is the introduction of what this is this impassioned preaching. And this is what Edward says is missing. And this is what he's reintroducing, is this fervor. And so do definitely take a look at this. Do definitely go ahead and read, what he's got written here, because I think it's a huge part, because we're looking at war. We're looking at the introduction of unsurety, on not just the areas they're moving into, but I mean, they're tangling with the French, they're tangling with the British, they're tangling with the Native Americans, and the surety of survival, even in the more sedate areas, is not there, and he wants them to realize that they're in jeopardy. And I think this is a huge part of our culture in the time period. So I'll let you go.